He turned his video on long enough for us to know that he's not on the golf course. Either that or he has a really good background filter. Yeah, that's true.
No golfing today.
Nice to be back in person.
Okay, I'm ready.
So we're good to go? All right, let's get the Calaveras County Water District regular board meeting for May 26th. Let's call to order and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, may we have the roll call, please?
Director Underhill,
Here.
Director Thomas,
I'm here.
Director Ratterman,
Here.
Director Cicada.
Here. And we have Jeff Davison absent with notice.
Yes, sorry.
All right, time for public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment? I see none here in the boardroom. Anybody online?
Nope.
Going once? Okay, no public comment. Let's move on to item 3, consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. 3A is approval of the minutes for the board meeting of April 28th and May 12th, 2021, and report on the monthly investment transactions for April 2021.
Move for approval.
Second. All right, any public comment for the consent agenda? Seeing none, we have the roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Cicada.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to 4, new business. 4A, discussion action regarding awarding and authorizing a construction contract for the La Contenta wastewater treatment plant fence project. Damon?
Good afternoon, directors.
Good afternoon.
The district budgeted $200,000 in the 2021 fiscal year budget for site improvements to the La Contenta spray field property. This was the recently purchased property next to the La Contenta effluent storage pond. One of the objectives before we can turn it into a spray field is that we secure the site, and that's a state requirement. So we solicited bids in late April. We received 2 proposals to fence the property. One from Richter Fencing, excuse me, for a total cost of $156,000, right around $26 a linear foot, and the other for $113,000, almost $114 from Dairies Construction, and that came out to just under $19 a linear foot. And the ask is that the board authorize the GM to enter into an agreement with Dairies Construction for the lower bid of $113,000 in order to construct the fence around the new La Contenta spray field property. The fence is going to be 6 foot tall. It's going to have a 4 foot no climb field fence and then 4 strands of barbed wire. There'll be I think there's 3 gates also.
Dairies, have we?
I have not worked with the contractor, but there are folks in CCWD that do know the contractor. They're local.
Oh.
Yeah, so, and they're ready to get to work right away. The objective is to get this done before July. So it's 6,000 linear feet. They've got their work cut out for them.
Oh.
How big is your crew?
I'm not sure.
2.
Could be. Could be.
Damon, I saw the 48 inches, 4 feet, and then barbed wire. That I don't think I've seen a fence like that. Just 4 feet. I mean, like most cyclone fences are at least 5 feet, and some taller, and then barbed wire on top of that. I know that the gates are 6 feet tall, and the fence is supposed to be 6 feet after the, but just a 4 foot no climb fence, and then what does no climb look like? Is it just small holes?
Correct. It's the small rectangles. You can't really stick your toe in there. It's sometimes known as wildlife fence. So yeah, we did some constructability reviews, more like a cost estimate based on cyclone, and cyclone would have just been through the roof. And so we looked at the requirement for the state to secure spray field property. And really, the requirement is pretty straightforward. It could be a barbed wire fence, but our thought, since we do get a lot of foot traffic through the area, the thought would be to try to minimize as much trespass as possible. So we thought the 4 foot field fence would help to kind of reduce any unwanted foot traffic through the property.
Okay, it just seemed like an odd. I don't know that I've seen that type of fencing, but I'm in favor.
Okay.
Oh,
One
Scott,
more.
Scott, I built fence just like that in Mogadishu.
Okay,
Okay.
and where
What?
where were you building fence, Russ?
Mogadishu, Somalia.
Oh, okay,
So that makes it all right.
right, yeah. So maybe
I
that's
have
where.
one more question, and that's, fire protection is included for the full duration of the project. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
contractor will have water supplied on site. So when they're doing any welding for bracing or the gates or the corners, we're not going to get any surprise phone calls about a grass fire.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
In theory.
Exactly.
All right, board, do we have any other questions?
That's it.
Motion and then over to the public comments.
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, then I'll put it up.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Thomas.
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Cicada.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 4B, discussion direction regarding the enterprise fleet vehicle order contained in the proposal for 2021-22 fiscal year budget and that of payment. So
Hello, everybody. So, within the next upcoming budget, we do plan to replace 10 more vehicles as part of the enterprise vehicle lease replacement program. So they're contained in the proposed budget now, and that would be 6 half-ton pickups, 3 1-ton pickups, and then 1 2.5-ton pickup. But in order to secure vehicle availability, we need to essentially call in the order to enterprise now, because the verdict is out on whether or not we'll even be able to obtain the vehicles we desire to purchase. Just there's such a heavy run on vehicles at this point in time. It's questionable whether or not we're even going to get them if we order them. But in order to try to get our foot in the door and get in line, get in the queue to be able to obtain these vehicles, we need to call for their order prior to the board's approval of the budget. So what the ask is if the board could approve the district requesting the order for these vehicles now, that would allow us to get in the queue and to at least make a full-hearted attempt to be able to obtain them through the enterprise lease program. Still would be no guarantee, but it would obligate, it's just under $140,000 in the proposed budget towards the next round of vehicle leases.
well, I think we've already approved this
Well,
vehicle lease policy. We should
oh, yeah.
move forward. That's what I feel about it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, no, is this just, circumstances saying we don't know?
Yeah,
Is it
so,
our world that's,
well, so what I understand, what happened a lot during COVID is the vehicle lease companies sold a lot of their inventory off, and a lot of large contractors sold a lot of vehicle inventory off. And then since things have started to transition, there's essentially been a run on all of the vehicles. And then there's also been reduced manufacturing from the suppliers. So we've got kind of two things going on. We don't have as many vehicles in play, and then we have more folks actually trying to purchase the vehicles that we use.
And really what we want to do here, I think Damon explained it well, but this is a bit of an odd one because we're asking for approval from the board. We just didn't want to, we need to commit now if we're going to do this.
yeah. it
We just
makes
didn't want
sense.
to get ahead of the board because it would normally be a part of next year's budget, which will be in front of you next month.
Right.
And we don't want to spend money that you haven't authorized yet. So what we're asking for on this one is it's an expenditure for next year, but we need to commit to it before
Right.
the end of this month.
So there's no outlay of cash today.
Correct.
It'll be in next year, so it's just outside of the formal adoption of the budget.
It's not an outlay of money, but we're committing to it.
Correct,
Yeah.
but it'll be next fiscal year,
That's
which we
Right.
anticipate to approve. Russ?
I am in total agreement with this proposal, but I just have to ask a question that says that it's a replacement. So these are the next phase of planned replacements. We started this program with Enterprise about going on a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so this would be the third phase right here. Yep.
But certainly we're not already replacing some of the original pickups that we got from Enterprise, are we?
We are not.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay, so these are older vehicles that we have in our fleet, so we will be surplusing those, is that?
Yes. So we surplused 10 vehicles this last winter as part of that phase one. These vehicles, so what happened after the initial phase, some of those vehicles that were replaced were deployed elsewhere, and then others were surplused. And then when phase two went through, the same thing happened. Some of those vehicles were kept. They might have a need, they might be a larger truck. So we might have surplused a Ford Ranger rather than a F-350. That the same thing will happen with this round. One thing that's interesting with this round of vehicles is if, and this is a big if we can work to secure Ford F-150s, their market price for CCWD is very low, and it creates an opportunity to actually almost come in neutral with the vehicle use when we go to surplus that. And we might actually surplus those quicker than within 3 years. It might even be within a year because the price is so low. The price point is so low for the district. However, so what that has caused is that rather than replace some vehicles that might be 3/4 ton vehicles, we're going to use 1/2 ton vehicles because we can get a more cost-effective base price, and we can save costs and with fuel and repair and upfit with purchasing a 150 rather than a 3/4 ton with a service body.
I am aware that the Ford F-150 pickup is available now with I think it's an engine out of a Range Rover. It's a little diesel engine that is remarkably fuel efficient. And you were here a couple of months ago talking to us about the California Air Resources Board saying, these combustion engines, typically fueled trucks and cars are going to be off the road in 2035 or something. So, I don't think it's quite ready yet that we should be concerned about buying a truck that we might keep until 2035. But you've got to have a date on your wall where that is going to become a consideration. I'm assuming you at Enterprise or.
It's a really interesting topic, and it seems to be changing by the day. 2 months ago, if you were to say to me, we need to start looking at an all-electric fleet or an electric fleet of service vehicles, not administrative vehicles, but service vehicles, I would have said, there's no way. And here we are now talking about the F-150 Lightning coming out. Michael and I were just looking at it, and we acknowledge it's kind of a higher end vehicle, but at the same time, it's starting to kind of set the table for what we would call service trucks. That there may be a consideration here in the future towards their use, and so that year for us is 2029. For counties with a higher population, it's 2027. And so, like I said, a couple months ago, I wouldn't even have thought of service vehicles. And now I'm starting to see conversation about service vehicle replacement with electric vehicles. I'm also starting to see larger equipment conversations now, vac-ons, dump trucks. I mean, we wouldn't, there was not even a consideration a couple months ago about those vehicles. And now we're actually discussing that there's manufacturers that are now working on them.
Yes, I think it's a great point. So if the CARB clean fleet rule goes into effect as proposed right now, we won't have to keep an eye on that date because we won't be allowed to buy internal combustion motors even well before that 2035 date.
Right.
They'll have forced us to buy all electric before then anyways. And I was going to save this for my GM report, but plug for July 20th, Region 3, Aqua Region 3 meeting where Damon will be one of the panelists on a panel talking about the clean fleet rule. So mark that on there.
Well, if you have a service truck that's all electric, will you simultaneously order a trailer and a generator to go behind it?
I mean, so these are all the questions that go in so I'm part of the CARB Clean Air Resources Board and Working Group. These are the kind of questions that we're asking each other.
Is this just for California or nationwide?
The CARB rule is just
California.
Okay.
But if Caitlyn Jenner gets elected, then this all, we'll have a new CARB board and everything.
Right.
Right.
Scott, do you have any comments?
Well, I was just gonna say exactly what Russ said, but no, that's the only. I'd like to go make a motion that we provide this I guess what we're looking for is just authority. The board's, I mean, the staff's looking just for authority to go ahead and order the vehicles and pay for them next year. I move for acceptance.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Any public comment?
I do have one question.
Uh-huh.
I remember that, you very nicely laid out all the money element. When we discussed this, is 138,880 part of that figure that you gave us?
Yeah, yes. So this is the lease cost for these 10 and the upfit charges. So the toolboxes and service box and the roof racks and whatnot.
Okay.
Do we take, like, when we're trading in a truck or surplusing it, do we use the toolboxes from those to the new ones?
Yes, we do. Yep.
All right, and seeing no public comment, correct, online? None? All right, go ahead and take the roll.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
and Director Cicada.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 4C, Introduction to Water Supply and Demand Assessments, and that would be Brad Arnold. Hi, Brad.
Yeah, good afternoon, directors. So the agenda item here is going to overview the new water supply and demand assessments. And just to bring us up to speed where we're at here, the Urban Water Management Plan public review period closed last Friday. So at this point, we're working on collecting all the comments that we received and trying to incorporate some of the revisions and suggested changes into the document itself in preparation for the final documents that would come before the board in late June for adoption to meet the July 1st deadline.
Excuse me, so we did get
a handful of public comments on their
Did
two
you?
letters. Yeah, and some very positive feedback as well as some feedback for us to consider on planning going forward. A couple of those were less about the actual plan itself and more teeing off concepts in the plan and trying to suggest things that we should be aware of and pay attention to. But we'll do our best to respond to those in a matrix comment format that I believe will be an appendix to the plan when it comes before you. And so with that, what brings us here today is specifically the new annual water supply and demand assessment portion of this urban water management plan package. This WSDA requirement going forward in 2022 is going to be our quantification of supplies and demands for the district for each of our water service areas to try and determine where we're at with regards to water shortage conditions, where we might put together responses from our water shortage contingency plan, and essentially builds on the analysis from the urban plan. And it builds on the shortage concepts from the new water shortage contingency plan. And now it puts it into action where each year we will submit to the state our calculated and quantified analysis of where we're at with supplies and demands. And what you see in attachment B in the, in the agenda item attachment B here is the 6 shortage stages that are proposed with the water shortage contingency plan. It's worth mentioning that these have not been adopted by the board yet. So the 6 stages and the resulting shortage response actions and other things are not formalized by CCWD. We have a chance to revise and change some of those prior to adoption, but these are at least what's proposed in the latest round of the urban plan update. And then with regards to attachment A, this is the WSDA procedures document that I'm talking about. This is an appendix to the water shortage contingency plan. Again, laying out our strategy, our cookbook, if you will, for how we're going to put together these assessments each year that we submit to the state. Now, we are fairly open as to how we construct and put them together and define the cookbook in there. A lot of it came from concepts with myself, working with the consultant, as well as Michael and others. However, the water code actually requires that we must include a reference to the water shortage contingency plan actions. And furthermore, we must include a subsequent dry year in the analysis. So forecast the remaining part of the current year, assume a subsequent dry year for the purposes of shortage determinations and analyses. And that brings us to where we're at with this agenda in reviewing the 2021 conditions, putting the proposed procedures into action and providing an example of what exactly we're talking about here. So taking this current drought situation, running it through that procedures document that we put together to provide an example. So that way, if we have any concerns with the formulations, with the outputs, maybe we want to tweak how this is done while still sticking to the California Water Code requirements, we have the chance to do that before these are adopted with the urban plan in late June. It's important to note a couple things in this analysis package that you see in attachment C for each of our water service areas. One of them is that they are on a fiscal year basis, which means that they're from July to the subsequent June of each year. The actual WSDA analysis formulas and bringing that to the board for consideration prior to submission to the state would occur sometime in April or May of each year, which means that we will have some months of available fiscal year data from the previous July up until when we perform the analysis. And then the forecast portions for the remaining part of the current fiscal year, as well as the subsequent dry year, will follow the procedures outlined in the attachment A procedures document here. Those are largely based on urban water management plan analysis of what available supplies look like in dry years, critically dry years, droughts, etc., as well as trends from historic use data. So you'll see a number of references in attachment C analysis here to pulling from different years and then adjusting as needed to try and fit some of the historic use trends to get a better sense of what we might look like in this subsequent dry year, which in the case of attachment C here would be from this July all the way through next June. So again, we're assuming that there's these current drought conditions, this 60% low year that we're at now, plus another subsequent really dry year. And that's how we make these shortage determinations. And it's really for planning purposes. It's things that we could potentially do now, recommendations for the district to do now with regards to shortage response actions and other things identified in the shortage contingency plan, assuming that the next fiscal year really goes sideways on us and we have another really dry precipitation year. And so in the 2021 fiscal year plus subsequent dry year analysis that you see in attachment C, we do identify that there are potentially some months of shortage in the Wallace and Sheep Ranch areas. I will note in there that each one of them propose a shortage stage consistent with attachment B. And in this case, again, we're currently in very dry conditions, 60% of accumulated precipitation for the average of this time of year. But with that subsequent dry year, the worst we get in Wallace is a stage 2 shortage, which is still mostly voluntary actions. Again, we have some chance to adapt and to formulate or revise how we're doing this. But I think the takeaway out of all of this is twofold. One, look at the available supplies for each service area. You notice that compared to what our intake is and what our analysis shows, we're still in very good standing, and we can adjust and pay attention to operations as needed. Moving into a subsequent dry year, we're far from in terrible shape at this point. And then the other part is that even with worst case conditions, a stage 2 shortage, which is mostly voluntary actions, is really not a bad position to be in compared to other parts of the state.
The last time we went into that was, I don't even remember the year, for the Wallace area, remember?
Yeah, yeah, I don't recall. It might have been around the 2014-15 during the last drought, perhaps. Yeah.
And so are you modifying the program itself, or are you?
Well, we're looking at the shortage response actions and the shortage contingency plan. A lot of the same things we did last time are the same. Some of the new voluntary actions, monitoring programs, the WSDAs, like I'm talking about here, those are all brand new. So a lot of it has to do with monitoring and tracking where we're at with shortage. That is really the new aspects of the urban plan package. So at this point, again, these are simply recommendations, and each year when I bring the WSDAs to the board and ultimately submit them to the state, it's simply a recommendation of where are we at? Can we forecast to figure out what another dry year looks like? If the drought continues into year 3, 4, 5, maybe it starts to get worse and we have to, modify what the shortage response actions are. Of course, state regulations, controls from Sacramento with regards to conservation mandates and things may still dictate what we have to do as a district. But ultimately, it is the board's decision whether or not to follow the recommendations in the WSDAs. And again, with regards to these draft WSDAs provided in attachment C, these are just an example of what we're proposing in the procedures, and they can be modified before the board adopts the package in late June. So with that, I'll just make one final mention with regards to the 2021 drought year, that of course a drought was declared by the governor on the 12th of May, which did include Calaveras County, as well as I believe 38 or so counties of the state. So it is wide ranging. The U.S. Drought Monitor, if you look at the latest water data package on our website, shows that most of the state is in extreme or exceptional drought. So unfortunately, we are heading into some pretty bad water supply conditions for most of the state. Again, Calaveras County, relatively speaking, looks in fairly good shape. But we certainly will need to pay attention to things like potential curtailments of water rights like we saw during the last drought, and to be prepared for other things that might come from Sacramento with regards to mandates or restrictions that way. So with that, I know there's a lot of information in here. I'm happy to unpack or explain further if there are any questions around this.
I just wonder if, in what you proposed here, is there anything that you seem to think concerns you more than something else that perhaps couldn't get adjusted based on what we have here? Or you feel like this is pretty good for right now and it still could be a fluid type report ongoing? Or is there something that stands out that you think, I don't know? Or
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, as I pointed out there, the available supplies at this point, I think keeps us in pretty good shape. We have a lot more available supplies on the Stanislaus and even in the McComey watershed than we use in a year. We know that from analysis I showed in previous presentations, we've got a lot more supply than demand. And so I think for the most part, I would say 5 out of our 6 service areas are in great shape. This just shows us we got to pay attention, adjust as needed, and be prepared for what might be a lingering drought into the future, and just prepare certain voluntary actions and stuff that way. I will say with regards to the 1 out of 6 service areas with Wallace, both the urban plan and now this analysis here highlights that we do have some vulnerabilities in our groundwater only service area down there in the northwestern part of the county. The wells may have some infrastructure issues that we need to pay attention to. We're also limited by the pumping capacity of those wells. That area could be impacted from some drought issues. We know that, relatively speaking, that part of the basin isn't as in drastic shape as other parts to the west. But I think what this also highlights here is that out of all 6 areas from a water supply condition, that's probably the one we need to pay most attention to and look into things like supplemental surface water and start investigating before it's too late.
Yeah. I just forgot what I was going to say. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. In your last paragraph, you said CCWD anticipates coordinating with county officials and other water suppliers in order to promote water conservation activities and will engage with the public on drought-related topics as needed. Because Then, we've been in this situation, of course, before, and, you know, there was much talk with the county over who was going to, remember that, scenario, Russ? And, you know, about who truly had the final say about water and drought conditions, and, you know, I just wanted to make sure that we're okay in that area.
Yeah, you, as far as drought restrictions go or conservation measures. Yeah, I mean, these are, that's very clearly laid out in state water law, what our obligations, the roles and responsibilities are there. There are land use requirements that the county has jurisdiction over that they have to comply with.
Maybe that was what it was.
And those things do now more than ever and increasingly since, you know, probably early 2000s. Those do require water supply assessments, and there is a lot of water supply planning that goes into land use planning as well, and that's the purview of the county. But they work with us on those things and rely on our assessments typically.
Who's spearheading that from the county? Is it a,
Yeah, it would typically be their planning director, and that's a vacancy right now. So we're waiting to see who the new planning director will be.
I thought, what's his name?
Peter Maurer was the most recent planning
Oh,
director.
okay.
And actually, I was just hearing from Rebecca that I'm blanking on her name right now. She's great. She works with COG, who is, I think, the interim planning director. But I'm sure they're working through the process of looking for a new planning director, but it'd typically be their planning director that we would coordinate with on that. And we also work closely with environmental health, but that's typically more on the wastewater side and other issues. But so the county does have some water, some jurisdiction over water supply to that extent that it comes with their land use authority.
Okay.
And just to mention as well that with regards to this portion of the last paragraph, part of what I was also referencing is things like Calaveras Conserves, the program that CCWD was part of. Don't be surprised if something like that starts up again as we continue to move into the drought period here.
What I was going to say was I imagine the discussion and watching all these supplies and whatnot are something that's part of your regular management meetings, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, not our regular staff meetings. I mean, as conditions change or new regulations are handed down or new compliance, new
Then it's
requirements,
brought
then we
up.
would discuss those things. Yeah.
When we first started talking about this urban water management plan, I don't remember what statistic that you cited, but we're the only agency in the county that has to do this because of the size of our district. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. How about Blue Lake Springs? I mean, they have customers. Will they be obligated to enforce restrictions on their customers as well?
None at this time. I believe the criteria you're referencing is the Urban Water Management Plan Act, 3,000 people, 3,000 acre feet in a year delivered. We are the only ones in county that fall over that threshold. And so as a result, Blue Lake Springs does not have to do the urban plan or shortage plan or any of these types of analyses.
Well, I know that they don't have to do the analyses, but my question is, will the state require that they put notices in their bills that their customers have to cut back 10% or 20%?
Yeah, so they'll still be subject to state mandates. And in the case of Blue Lake Springs, is a private corporation subject to CPUC mandates. But with the public agencies, they'll still be subject to those state mandates, just not, we don't have jurisdiction. We would not enforce any of this over those agencies, but they'll still be subject to state mandates.
They because of what you just said, they're not 3,000 people or what
3,000 acre feet a year.
acre feet. Okay. But do any of those agencies request copies of this so that they know what's being required of us?
Yeah, and in fact, with the public review draft as well as the hearing and other notices were sent to Blue Lake Springs, Utica, UPUD, all of the other suppliers and county planning staff and others. So they're well aware of what we've been doing, and we even talked with Dave Hicks of Blue Lake Springs about some of our planning, for instance. So yeah, they're well aware.
Yeah, in fact, they kind of look forward to it. This is a CCWD's urban water management plan, but it captures the conditions in the county that they know, they know to watch for it every 5 years. Dave was online during our public hearing because they're paying attention. So it does, I think, it's a resource for other agencies, even if they're not necessarily subject to the water shortage contingency plan requirements.
Yes.
So you're fulfilling our goal of being a trusted leader then.
Right.
Right.
Hopefully, yeah.
Right into the vision statement. Perfect.
Nice.
And just for your information, Friday is Dave Hicks' last day. And they already have a replacement for him, so that's very encouraging. He's been with them for
Russ, do you have anything else? I was
a
gonna
few
ask
years.
Well, I do have just the definition of urban is, a city or a town. And when you think of, urban centers, what I conjure up is San Francisco and all that stuff. How does our little county qualify to be even called urban?
It's a good question. My understanding of the criteria is it has largely to do with municipal, residential, commercial, industrial supplies. So it's less about the sort of density of populations and more about the sectors of water that we're supplying to versus more of agricultural heavy areas in the Central Valley, for instance. So, and furthermore, this 3,000 acre foot, 3,000 people criteria, we actually fall under it just as a combination of all of our service areas. Because no one service area, well, maybe two of them, Ebbets and Jenny, fall under that, but the rest of them wouldn't for sure. So yeah, we fall under it mainly because of the sectors that we supply to.
Okay.
Good.
Quick, if I could make one quick comment, I just want to acknowledge Brad for tremendous effort, not only pulling together the urban water management plan, but this is an extra step of actually putting the proposed water shortage contingency plan that's in the proposed urban water management plan that'll be before the board next month, and actually putting it into practice, so that we have an opportunity to see how it'll work prior to adoption and make sure that it does what we want it to do. So it was kind of an extra step above and beyond that Brad took the initiative on to do and pulled it all together in a pretty short period of time. So thank you, Brad.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Thank you. Let's see. Does Scott, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to let Brad know that I appreciate all his hard work on this. This is a very impressive report. I did thumb through it, as well as the urban water management plan. I think you've been very busy, Brad, and I wanted to acknowledge you for all your hard work.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
One other,
I'd like to just add, because of how long have you been here now?
Coming up on a year in about
10
4
years,
weeks.
And that is,
Yeah.
that is remarkable. That is really remarkable in, speaking about the entire package and the depth of your knowledge of this. It's just very, very good.
Well, I appreciate the compliments there. Yeah, it was certainly something that needed to get done. It fell on my plate in the Water Resources Department. And so, welcome here, draft up a document all about the history of the district and everything that's done here. So I appreciate that it's getting good feedback so far, and hopefully.
about how good you are, I want to say, I appreciate and am thankful for your expertise that you bring here, and all your presentations have been really thorough, and I appreciate that. And then the other comment, at the town hall meeting, Michael, we said we can go on the website and look at the reservoir storage. Is that where this came from? This is our.
Yeah, looking at what you're holding up.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that might be something to mention for those that weren't at the town hall meeting, it's on our website, right?
The
link.
data packets that Brad put together, updated daily on the water resources portion of our webpage.
Mhm.
Gives the whole snapshot of the hydrologic conditions in the county
Very
every
good.
day.
So you're not looking for any direction from the board or anything?
No, no immediate direction. This is just pulled in front of you because again, we have a chance before this is adopted to change any of the procedures or what the WSDAs look like. So it's really just provided as an example. And if we want to change or adopt or revise, we can do that before it's brought to the board in late June. So.
Go ahead.
On this presentation here that Cindy's talking about, this reservoir storage data, you keep an eye on Lake Comanche.
You know, it's funny, as this has been updating daily throughout the year, it's been somewhat depressing to watch the accumulated precipitation chart on the front because you see all the highs and lows of other years. And this has been a fairly bad year in terms of precipitation. And most recently, as you point out, now it's the reservoir storage page that's starting to look pretty bleak on there too. So.
Okay, any public comment? Sorry.
When Comanche gets low, the wells get low nearby. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's good to note and certainly more reason to pay attention to Wallace.
All right, any public comment? Seeing none. Any other questions? Anybody? All right, let's move on to reports. And we have the general manager reports. Thank you, Brad. Michael.
I just want to note for Director Davidson that Cindy moved through this meeting very, very quickly and efficiently. So
Well, I was just going to say thank you for your
we'll
report.
let him know.
So,
And with that, no, I actually do have a few things to get to. One of them is I want to introduce the board to Dave Powell. Dave has been with us for a few weeks now, months. As a retired annuitant, he brings a tremendous amount of experience, former district engineer at El Dorado Irrigation District, among other roles that he's played, and was able to step in and tackle a bunch of stuff that Damon has been working with him on and provide a lot of really useful assistance and information. And just great insight too, taking a look under the hood of how we're doing things here. So I want to introduce the board to Dave. We were hoping to have him with us for longer, but he's also just recently accepted the position of Public Works Director for the city of Newport, Oregon, where
my sister lives there.
we will be visiting for sure. It's a great town.
Town. Nice.
So he'll be with us through the end of next week, I think. But I wanted to make sure the board had an opportunity to meet Dave and
Say
welcome
goodbye.
him and then say goodbye.
Welcome, thank you, and good luck.
couldn't we make him a better offer?
We'll work on that.
I would take Newport. Have you been up there? It's beautiful.
So
I had,
thank you Dave, for your contributions in a short
Yeah,
period of time.
thank you.
It's great to have you.
Is that it?
No. So, a couple of other updates. So, we've had a sort of our normal DC trip still postponed, because of pandemic conditions. But Mia has still been very hard at work and scheduled a bunch of those meetings anyways, virtually. Jessica's been participating in those along with Director Ratterman. And so we've met with legislative staff from Senator Padilla and Senator Feinstein's offices, Bureau, not reclamation, multiple different Army Corps officials and Office of Management and Budget. And then we have upcoming meetings still that are still scheduled. So it's been a huge focus still on bringing in federal funding for Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant, but also just a good opportunity to check in with our legislative representatives and give them an update on all things Calaveras water. We have had some good meetings with Mr. Kingsbury at CPUD. We're up against the expiration of our water supply agreement with CPUD, so I anticipate bringing that to the board at the next board meeting for approval to extend the water supply agreement that we really rely on to serve our West Point service area. We had a camera meeting last week, a lot of discussion about Comanche and water levels and water supplies and on the McCollum and Jackson Valley Irrigation District in particular has already been hit pretty hard by the drought and by reduced water deliveries. So it was a good opportunity to connect with all those agencies and check in on how everybody is doing. We a couple of other updates, and then talk about the town hall a little bit. But the good news is SB 223, that was the one that was proposing a new sort of overhaul of SB 998 that hasn't even gone into effect yet, and changing, requiring debt forgiveness or changing how we do handle arrearages. That bill has been pulled, so that will not be moving forward. And that was a huge focus of Aqua's legislative efforts this session, and so it was pleasant news to see that one has been taken off the table. We already talked about drought conditions, and we don't have details yet from the state as to what their actions are going to be, but we'll keep the board informed on that front. Let's see. A lot of budget and CIP work still going on. Rebecca and her team continue to make updates and revisions after we presented it to the Finance Committee. And we anticipate bringing that to the board. We were thinking about, we normally would schedule a special board meeting with a workshop dedicated to the budget. We were thinking about trying to do that during the regular meeting if we kept the agenda light on June 9th. I'm not sure that is doable anymore, so we may be working with the board to coordinate a special meeting on that, on the budget, the way we typically have done it in the past. But we'll be in touch with board members on that front. One way or another, either June 9th or sometime shortly after that, we'll be discussing the budget and the CIP in detail with the full board.
Because I have June 15th.
We had originally asked.
Yeah.
for After the finance committee, and then I pulled the board on that.
Okay, yeah, so we may stick with that.
Special meeting.
Yeah, and we would get the draft out well in advance of that date, so you have time to review prior to. More to come on that. Last night's town hall was in Copperopolis. Pretty good attendance, a pretty good group there, both in person and online. Really have to acknowledge the whole team that made that possible. Jessica did a tremendous amount of coordination in advance and outreach, and the outreach was effective because it reached people and people showed up. So the proof is in the pudding. She did the lion's share of the work on preparing the presentation and coordination with Damon on that, and others. And also really special recognition for John Gomes and Rebecca Hitchcock, who pulled off on a very short time frame a pretty tricky IT feat of having it live streamed, an outdoor meeting, live streamed that by all accounts was everybody could hear us. They could participate if they wanted to, whether they were there in person or attending online. So really appreciate the work that staff put into making that what I think was a very successful meeting. Gives us an opportunity to communicate directly with ratepayers and with members of the community. There's a lot of people out there that are informed. We got a lot of really good questions, and they care about the district. They care about what's happening, and then sometimes there's inaccurate information that circulates, and so the best way for us to address that is to get out in front of people and answer questions and provide accurate information. I think we were able to do that last night. So,
Excuse me, what kind of numbers did you have of attendees?
way more than the last Abbott's Pass town hall, if that's what you're asking. I'm not sure. I don't know if we took a head count. We should have. I would say probably 20
Yeah,
in
it
person.
22 in person.
Oh, you did? Okay, good. And
Nice.
6 online, yeah. So it was a,
It ended up being like 12. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
or in and out, maybe, yeah. Yeah, so pretty good attendance. Like I said, really good questions. I already had a conversation with a gentleman who was there last night, who called this morning to ask some follow-up questions. And so had a good conversation with him this morning. So it's an engaged community, and I think we want to do that more often. And we'll hit the other corners of the county, and then we'll circle back and do it all over again, and make it a regular occurrence. And appreciate Director Thomas and Director Skata for being there to participate as well. Lastly, I think I've talked to everybody about this already, but I will be out of the office and incommunicado next week. So smoke signals, carrier pigeons might work, but otherwise I'll be floating on a river. I already mentioned the July 20th Region 3 Aqua meeting that Damon will be presenting, or part of the panel for that. And I think just the very last thing, I think everybody already knows, William Hale Metzger was born yesterday. So
They get a name.
he got a name. They rejected my suggestion of megawatt. But healthy 9.75 pound baby boy, our dear friend Joel has a son. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And we'll move on to board reports. We'll start with Bertha.
I'm so sorry to say I don't have anything to talk.
What? Okay, next, Russ.
Okay, well, last week we had an opportunity to talk with Ralph Copeland, who has been to the meeting a number of times, a board meeting, and he came in for a session with Brad and with me and with Michael on to address his observations about the urban water management plan. And I think it was a positive meeting. He walked away with I think, a better impression of that this district is quite transparent, or he had made some comments that maybe we weren't in the past. And Ralph was also in attendance last night at the town hall, and I really want to repeat what I said last night, that I am particularly proud of this organization and leadership of the organization, and all of the staff, and the overlapping skills and abilities. I mean, we've got a building full of intelligent, well-qualified people here. It's just very exciting. So, and I hope that the people that were listening to my comments took them to heart, because it's important that they know that their water needs and their sewer treatment needs are being legally and sensitively met. So, what else? I want you to know that I went by to check on that leak this morning outside of Griff's, and
The
it
restaurant.
was
So it's
not
not still running. I showed Damon the videos this morning. So.
And I talked to Tom Hicks about that, and he said he would do an investigation immediately. So. Anyway, that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Scott, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Thanks, Cindy. Next week, they have a local government committee meeting, the virtual meeting on the 2nd. And the following week, I plan on attending that CPUD meeting, where they're also going to be come in front of them, the potential contract extension. We had a 15-year contract extension for water in West Point that we use water almost every single year in the middle of the summer when our water dries up. So they're contemplating. I think that thing expires next month in June. So they're here at the last minute. They're going to be bringing that. That's going to appear on their agenda before them to make a decision. And so I'm gonna, it's a virtual meeting also. They're not meeting in person either. And then the following week on June 14th, the JPIA property group will be meeting. So that's all I got to report. Oh, and Mountain Counties, we have a meeting that Friday also at Mountain Counties
All right,
Water.
we're done.
And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, with me, we didn't have an IRWM meeting last week. And then a comment on the town hall, that was the first one that I attended, and I wanted to get an idea of what to expect when we do our district. And I was very impressed, and with what Russ said about all the employees, so professional and so informative. And I was proud to see all of you be able to respond so effortlessly to questions. And I was also pleased that, there was a lot of questions being said, but not really anything derogatory. And I don't think I heard anything about any complaints about not getting in through a phone call. So I was really pleased about that, but truly, and you also made the comment that management staff is anywhere from 1 year to what, 3 years maybe? And look at the expertise we have with just such a new amount of management, I guess you could say. So that was really impressive, I can talk as well. So thank you. I concur with everything Russ says and agree with that. So is there any other information or future agenda items anybody'd like to mention?
I would just like to make a comment about the town hall meetings or whatever meetings we have down in Copperopolis. They are always well attended, and the crowd is very enthusiastic. They just, they come with all their questions and everything there. It's a pleasure to go down there.
Yeah,
Right.
I kind of saw that too, and
Uh-huh.
just with how involved and how they want to be involved in their community.
How
And you don't
engaged
get
they
that
are.
a lot of
Yeah.
places. So yeah, very nice, and a beautiful park too.
Yeah, I was just actually gonna say, I failed to mention, thank you to the Copper Cove Homeowners Association. The Black Creek Park is a beautiful
Beautiful.
facility.
I may have to go there.
Yeah, it was
They have
great.
walking trails too, I
It
imagine.
was great. It was great.
All right, so
One question about the live streaming and everything. Were you able to pick up on a Wi-Fi signal there out of the building? Hotspot. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable feat.
Good deal.
all right, so the next board meetings, Wednesday, June 9th, Wednesday, June 23rd. And now we'll be going into closed session. Government Code 54957.6, Agency Negotiators, General Manager Michael Minkler, HR Manager Stacy Lawler, and Michael Jarvis regarding negotiations with employee organization SEIU Local 1021 and Management and Confidential Unit.
One more thing. Great job, Cindy. This is a 1 hour meeting.
Woohoo! I
We're
was shooting for
give David
15
some
minutes.
crap. And